You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today. But before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is the Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma. And it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. So a huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. And finally, our third sponsor is 988. The Oklahoma 988 Mental Health Lifeline. 988 is a direct 3-digit lifeline that connects you with trained behavioral health professionals that can get all Oklahomans the help that they need. Learn more by visiting 988oklahoma.com. That's 988oklahoma.com. And now, let's get into today's episode. Fantastic podcast for you today. Family business story. Those of you who are listening from Tulsa will know this business, but I have Carlisle C4, as you are known, and Scott with me today from Mabrey Bank. Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming in early and ready to share the family story.
Happy to be here. So thanks for coming up this way.
Yeah. So diving into it straight away. Obviously, this is a banking business, and you guys have probably known nothing different growing up. What, I guess, from an early age, before we dive into the history of the bank, what was you kind of like your first memories of family, bank, and you know, stuff like that?
It's kind of funny. Actually, neither one of us really thought much about banking growing up. I think my only memory was going down to the bank and making paper airplanes when my dad was working on the weekends and throwing them through the lobby. But I went to undergrad in law school at the University of Oklahoma and never really thought about banking, and had a history degree. And once I realized I didn't want to teach or practice law, then that's the first time I thought about getting into banking. So it wasn't something that my dad came home every day and talked to us about banking, and that just kind of ended up happening naturally for me, and you may kind of get your 2 cents as well.
No, exactly. That's, exact same memory in terms of our dad going down on Saturday mornings sometimes, and, lobby lights are all off and going in offices exactly on yellow legal pads and making paper airplanes and throwing them around the lobby was getting into the dum-dum suckers. Going behind the teller line and getting those. The two things. And like Scott said, in fact, I think sometimes my dad, I don't know if he truly avoided, but never talked about the bank. And I went to college and I had my undergraduate degree, a liberal arts degree, and with a business concentration, I got a master's of art and teaching and coaching, and didn't really think I'd end up in that either, and then ended up in the bank. So
So Dad, then, from an early age for you guys growing up, was very kind of focused on you guys doing your own thing? Seems like it.
Yeah, very much so. He never really pushed us one way or another. My mom the same way, or even any of our relatives. And I don't remember really. We called our granddad Bucky, was his nickname. I don't remember him, talking much just about the bank. So so we just kind of had a normal upbringing and played sports, and they certainly emphasized school and making good grades, and we were certainly competitive in that realm. But the banking stuff was never really emphasized a whole lot.
And you mentioned you kind of had a passion for history until you go into the law practice.
Yeah, so it's actually really more advice from my dad, and I never really knew what I wanted to major in college. And he said, "Hey, Scott, most importantly, just make good grades. Major in something that you like, have a good GPA, and you can basically do anything you want. So if you want to be a doctor, surely you have to have a medical degree, or you want to be an engineer, you need to major in engineering." And I kind of liked history, so I majored in history and was able to make good grades there, and then. Although I'm not sure his advice was completely accurate, because when I had a history degree, I'm like, what am I going to do? So I went to law school, and then I clerked at a law firm for my third year of law school. I'd taken a job with them in their employment and labor group, hated it, and realized pretty quickly I did not want to practice law, and so that's the first time I thought about getting into banking, just because I also kind of like numbers and math and like people, and And so, I actually went to work at Bank of Oklahoma for a few years before I joined our family bank. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
And then C4, you said liberal arts. So you were...
Yeah, so I went to the University of Oklahoma my freshman year, not knowing what I wanted to do, and going to school and thinking of making good grades. Definitely struggled managing my time, being alone on my own for the first time, and so spent a year there. And then after that, decided I'd looked at some opportunities to play small college football, but didn't want to.
That's where his heart really was.
Pursue them at the time, and so ended up at Austin College in Sherman, Texas. So a small Division III school there to play football. About 1,200 people in enrollment, but it was small class sizes. So even if my professors weren't taking roll, they knew if I was in class or not. So it was great because all my credits transferred from the University of Oklahoma, but my GPA, I got to reset it and have a start over. And so, went there and ended up being a good thing for me. And then my wife and I got married right before my last semester, and not knowing what we wanted to do, and actually moved to Gunnison, Colorado. We grew up doing family ski vacations, and that's probably maybe my first passion, and football is probably a close second. And so we moved to Gunnison. She went to Western State College. I was working on her teaching degree at that time. After already graduating at Austin College, we met there. And then I worked at Crested Butte. Was going to work at a ski shop, moved mid-season, so cleaned condos, did housekeeping there, worked for a property management company, and one of the owners was there, and two of his best friends from college owned Flatiron Sports, which I believe is still there in Crested Butte. So had things set up for the next winter to do that. And then all of a sudden we pivoted, go back to Texas, back to Austin College, and both of us got our masters in art and teaching, and then so I decided to pursue then teaching and coaching.
Wow.
At that point in time, and then
went to Duke.
Then got to be a graduate assistant at Duke University. That was kind of my goal, get my foot in the door at Division I college football. So I was a graduate assistant there for 2 years, and after the second year in the summer, back to the family thing with the bank, we do a family vacation, a kind of family reunion, family planning around the bank, and we're there for that. And my grandmother, who was chairwoman of the board at the time, and then my aunt, who is currently chairwoman of the board, they both said, "Hey, would you ever think about coming to work at the bank?" And kind of, I was like, I've never said never. And so that's really probably the first time I don't know what I was there in 26, 27, 28, somewhere around in there, when kind of planted the seed a little bit to think about that.
Yeah. So. Tell me about the coaching things. You still actively coaching today?
So I am now. I've got 4 boys and coached them youth sports growing up. And then when we moved up here, the boys have been at Holland Hall. And my youngest, I never had the opportunity to coach him like I did the others. There's about an 11-year gap. And so he asked me in 7th grade, it was his first opportunity to play football. He's like, "Hey, Dad, you coached Will, Blake, and Cole. You've never coached me. Would you coach me?" And so I had the opportunity to help coach the middle school at Holland Hall, the 7th and 8th grade teams. And so done that for 4 going on 5 years. And then this year talked to some of the varsity coaches, help coach the middle school as well. And so that's an easy place for me to help them out, so they can have some people kind of take over for them where they need. But anyway, had the opportunity, talk to them, and I'm actually helping coach the varsity for the first time this year. So then still doing middle school.
Football is huge up here, isn't it? Like high school football is, a great friend of mine he calls Owasso athletics. So he calls football and basketball and all the other stuff, and he does Tulsa football and basketball as well. But their opening game was, I think, also Bixby at TU. Opening game, just crazy stuff. But football's life up here.
High school, college football,
it's crazy, right?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and especially here, obviously with Jinx Union, Bixby's come up over the years. So.
Our bank is headquartered in Bixby, so it's been nice having the Bixby football team be as good as it has been the last 10 or 15 years. So Coach Montgomery there does a great job.
When I first came to the States and went to a football game, and the whole Friday Night Lights thing, I was like, there's more people here than show up to like a professional soccer game back then. I was like, what is going on here? And these kids are out there running around, mum and dad are in the stands, and like, this is big business. It's awesome. I love it.
That was the opportunity going down to Texas to go to a small school, as I knew. I mean, even as
as big of a deal as it is here in Texas, it's just a whole nother complete
crazy.
level. I mean, just unimaginable. All the small schools, and of course Friday Night Lights is where they came with Plano.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm sorry, Odessa Permian.
Yeah.
So, but so just being able, I knew, hey, going down there, there'll be a lot of really good high school football players that I'll have a chance to be around, and not knowing if I could even compete or not. But it's huge.
Scott, you mentioned you grew up doing some sports as well. Did you take to anything particularly? I
was primarily a golfer. I played basketball and golf. Basketball up until my senior year of high school, and then played golf all the way through. And I did the reverse of Carlisle. I actually played golf 1 year at Austin College in Sherman, Texas. Realized, one, that my ceiling was probably NAIA golf, and number two, I didn't like it that much to put in that amount of time and travel. Sounds like played a little bit of college golf and so I transferred to OU as a sophomore and just went to school and had a good social life and a good time, and so I still play as much as I can, and have a son who's a freshman at OU, and he played competitive golf through high school, and I could have played college golf, but he figured out early on that he didn't want to do that either, so he's at OU having a good time right now.
Yeah, that's the one thing that people ask me, like, what would you have done if you didn't play golf? I'm like, probably would have gone to a state school and actually enjoyed school. Got to do everything that like most college kids get to do, not like the student athlete thing where you're like, schools for classes from 8 to 12 and then golf for the entire rest of the day.
Well, that's what it is. My son went through the recruiting process. I mean, a couple of coaches said basically, you have time to do kind of between, social life, your sport, and grades, do two of the three. And if you're playing your sport and then your grades, you don't have much time to have a social life. And he's a pretty social kid. And he loves golf, not afraid to work hard, but he's having a good time. So he's where he needs to be.
It's good to have that realization early that like I'm not going to be on tour, I don't have to get to enjoy school But that's really cool, and I know no doubt sport plays a huge part in the relationships through the bank and everything. Absolutely. You guys do as well. Not just obviously golf, like most people who play golf generally are understand the banking industry, I think, in general, but from a football side perspective as well, like that's just a social thing, and being out there, and it's all community based. It centers around community, doesn't it? So to that point then, doing some research, and you guys go to the website, mabreybank.com, you can see the About section, and it seems like the family's been in business or been in the banking business since 1906, which for America is a very long time ago.
Yeah, it actually predates statehood.
Right.
So, our great-great-granddad, G.W. Mabrey, was one of the founders of the bank in 1906, roughly, although the bank wasn't chartered until 1933, but actually was formed before statehood. And then our great-granddad ultimately became a teller and assistant cashier, and then was on the board, and that was Carlisle Mabrey Sr. And then he owned 10% of it, and then his death, our granddad, Carlisle Mabrey Jr., inherited that 10% and ultimately got a loan to buy out a lot of the partners in the bank in the late 60s. And so he had a controlling interest from the late 60s. I think owned 70% of it at that point in time. And the story my dad tells is my dad's the oldest of four. He's Carlisle III. Is that his dad called my dad and my dad's next brother Bruce, and basically said, hey, this bank's kind of stressing me out, and my granddad didn't do well with stress. He was a navigator in World War II, B-17 bombers, and didn't deal with people very well and stuff. And so I'm gonna sell the bank. He was barely keeping the interest current on the note. And
Dad used to say that. I mean, he would be difficult to work. Hard for him to keep some good people to help him. Yeah,
kind of a taskmaster, and and demanded a lot, as you might expect. A military guy would. And so my dad and Bruce said, hey, to their dad, don't sell the bank, and we'll come back and help you run it. And so they both came back about 6 months apart in 1972, and have been there ever since.
Yeah.
So,
My dad was a JAG officer at the time in the Air Force and stationed at Edwards Air Force Base.
Okay.
Did some research and was able to there was a hardship to save the family business, and so he had that opportunity to use that, and was out of the Air Force, and then went back to help run the bank.
That's really cool. And I mean, we were chatting before you guys showed up, like family business can be really great, but it also can be a major pain in the ass at times, right? Because you guys got to go to Thanksgiving, or you've got to go to family birthdays, but you also see each other at work, and it's like, I'm sure there's been some times where you're just like, I know it's your kid's birthday, but I need space.
Yeah. No, we do a good job of being able to, get along and leave work on the side, but certainly have our moments for sure, and frustrations, and Carlisle's a little bit more of a hotter temper, and those times can run kind of hard times, and I tend to be a little more controlled in that respect. But it's funny, one funny story on just family business and my dad and my granddad is my dad tells the story that my granddad agreed to pay him, I think it was maybe, $15,000 to come back and work at the bank. And so he gets there on the first day of work, and my granddad calls my dad in the office, and he says, son, I couldn't tell the board I was going to pay you $15,000, so I'm actually going to pay you $13,000. So my dad says, I got a $2,000 pay cut, the first day at work, but you couldn't do that if you weren't a family business. If my dad was not my granddad's son, you probably couldn't have taken another team member or employee and told him you're going to pay him less than what you agreed to. So
Yeah. So obviously you guys kind of explained like how you come back to the business, and you kind of thought, I'm going to do my own thing, and then you eventually come back, which I think is another thing in family business, right? Everyone kind of seems to circle back, and it's probably good that looking back that you guys, you guys were young enough and you went out and did your own thing. You see the world, right? You don't think, all is not just the bank, right? You got your world experience and then you come back, which brings more value, I think, to the business in general. But what year do you come back? What's kind of like the state of the bank at the time? How many branches do we have? Because obviously it seems to have grown since then. I mean, I drive past your Oklahoma City branch every day.
Sure. Well, so a couple things there, and I'll let you maybe talk a little about where the bank was whenever you came back. But we actually have a family employment policy that any Mabrey family member that desires to work at the bank, you have to go work somewhere else first. And at least I think it's a minimum of 3 years. And
2 years if you have an advanced degree.
A graduate degree.
Wow.
If you have
when did that
if you have a bachelor's degree.
They actually put in place when we were in high school, because they could see, we're two of 9 cousins or whatever, 11 cousins, and so we're the 2 oldest, and so they could see, hey, at some point the kids maybe want to come back to the bank, and so they put that in place. So it was before any of us were eligible to come work, and so it forced us to go out and and get our own experiences, and we can bring something back to the bank hopefully if we want to come back and work and prove yourself.
That's a great. That's so good.
And there has to be a need for the person too. It's not just, hey, I want to come back and we'll find somewhere to plug you in, so to speak. So
but when you came back in 99?
I came back, so in 99, as I said, had finished my second year at Duke, and could have continued for a third year, gone back to Texas, because I taught elementary PE, so I had my Texas teaching certification, could go back to Texas, and then even had interviewed for a few small college jobs there, and but then decided my role was a little bit of an operation. I mean, that's kind of learn the operations side of the bank, which fits my personality, and be a management trainee. I knew I didn't want to be a loan officer. It's like there's, just get to make any loan you want to, but it's like I'd want to give everybody a loan, and I could probably handle the muscle part of collections, but having to go after people, I was like, I don't think I'd be good at that. So I had the opportunity to learn the operations side and then kind of help with IT. Didn't have a programming background or anything like that, but just always enjoyed them. I had a Commodore 64 growing up, and just kind of going through that, and then being in college, and then familiar with the early stages of the internet even at that time. I mean, AOL and CompuServe and some of those dial-up, that's how old I am. And so kind of help them with the IT side of things. And so that was 99, and we had the bank in Okmulgee, 3 or 4 of the small branches, and then the bank in Bixby was actually a part of the holding company at the time, but was separate from the bank in Okmulgee. You had Citizens Bank in Okmulgee and Citizens Security Bank in Bixby. Because
I actually went to work at the bank in Bixby, and so in 2001. And so we had several bank charters. We had Walika, Wetumpka, Morse were all separate bank charters, and Haskell, and then Okmulgee and Bixby were separate. And so the Bixby Bank, that was kind of our entrance in the Tulsa market, where we expanded from being more of a rural community bank to starting to get into the metropolitan areas. And so we had a 10-year contract with the president of the Bixby Bank at the time, Homer Paul, and we had owned half of it in 1994 with him. So he retired in 2004. That's when we bought all of Citizens Security Bank in Bixby, which is founded in 1924. And so over the next couple of years, we merged all of the small bank charters into the Bixby Bank and made Bixby our headquarters. That included the Citizens National Bank, Haskell, Walika, Wetumpka, and ultimately Morris in 2018. And so that's when we consolidated our headquarters in Bixby, and that was our entrance in the Tulsa market. And so then we built a branch in Broken Arrow in 2005, I believe, 4 or 5, and then 81st Neal in 2007, Jinx in 2009, and then the one we're in here today in Midtown Tulsa in 2015. Yeah. And then entered the Oklahoma City market about 6 or 7 years ago, in about 2015 or 16, then and built our full service facility and opened it up about 2.5 years ago. Yeah. So yeah.
So is that, you kind of said 04, is that when you kind of like bring everything under the Mabrey Bank brand?
Yeah, actually, it was Citizens Security Bank. Okay. And so that was the surviving charter. All the other bank names were folded into Citizens Security Bank, and then we changed the name to Mabrey Bank 2015 roughly. Okay. Cool. And that was, more of a, it's kind of funny. Citizens Security Bank was kind of a mouthful to say. Yeah. There was a Citizens Bank.
And there's a lot, right? Yeah. There's so many out there.
Yeah, exactly. Some of the Citizens Bank. There was a security bank in town as well, and so when we changed the name, it was more of a branding opportunity, and it just kind of said who we are. And I had a lot of my friends tell me they were glad that we changed the name of the bank because they could never tell people who they banked with. They're like, we bank with the Mabreys, and so now it says who we are. So that's it's been a good
great
change.
For the brand, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then people who know the family. It sounds like there's a big family, right? So you guys know the family. They know wherever they are that they're connected to a Mabrey in some way through kids sports or coaching or whatever it is, golf. Right. It's much easier to bring people in. It makes a lot of sense.
It does. It
really helped. I mean, back to the Mabrey part, just we looked at some different names, just marketing companies coming in, and nothing really hit us. And then a gentleman who did our strategic planning for us forever was pretty good, was good on the marketing side, and said, hey, if there's not a compelling name reason, I wouldn't make the change. And as we've grown and bringing in John Pixley and Heather Van Hooser, a lot of bankers, and grown, and that was kind of, I think, the story they would tell a little bit too as well. Work for the Mabreys or with the Mabreys, and it's like we would just use the Mabrey name quite a bit, and so that, I think, helped us get a little bit more comfortable with actually putting our name.
Yeah, that's a huge decision too, right? Because it's depending on how whoever's in charge of the bank, and you think, hey, are we working towards an exit here? If we've got our name on it, like how does this all work? But I think when you put your name on it, obviously you take a lot of ownership in that. And it's a huge decision. I'm sure it's not obviously one you didn't take lightly. It seems like it took a while.
That's a good point. And for our team members too, I mean, coming to work with us, I think the fact that our name's in the bank, they know that we're in it for the long term. And Carl and I are now technically 4th generation, 3rd generation working in the bank, and most family businesses don't survive beyond the 2nd generation, and we're doing well and thriving in the 3rd generation, and so I think having our name on the bank, it took us a while to get used to it, but I think it was the right move. So we can't hide anymore, that's for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. So C4, you said you did the operation side of things when you came in because that fitted your personality. Scott, what about you? What was kind of like your entry into it? And
so I was always been on the lending side, or pretty much always. So at Bank of Oklahoma, I went to their management training program, let's call it, and focused on corporate lending. So I worked in the corporate banking department at BOK, doing large corporate lending for about 3.5 years, and then actually came to work. At the time, it was still Citizens Security Bank in Bixby as a loan officer. I did manage operations for 1 year. Our chief operating officer left just as I came on board, and so they asked me just to oversee it just until they found someone long-term to run it. So I did that for a year, which was a great experience for me on the operations side. But then I moved to the lending side and was a lender for several years. Then ultimately became our Tulsa Metro Region president, and then president of the bank, and then CEO in 2019. But all of my training and daily work duties were being a loan officer. So yeah. So
you guys are totally different then, right?
Yeah, it's funny.
Which is good. You need
absolutely.
that.
Just kind of naturally found our own spots in the bank, and he's always been more operationally focused, and that's his.
I think we've been very fortunate, blessed in that manner, and I think probably even back to my dad and my aunt and uncles, everybody, whenever we've had opportunities, there's been an opportunity for everybody to kind of plug in somewhere that fits them. And and I enjoyed back to even did anybody ever talk to you about working in the bank? And when I came back, I started working as a teller, and most of the people, this is at the bank in Okmulgee, had seen me grow up, and they knew me. I was Little Carlisle, and I think there were even a couple of people like, oh, can we still call you Little Carlisle? I'm like, yeah, sure.
If you want to.
Call me whatever you want. Yeah. No worries. But so when we worked as a teller and worked in proof and worked in bookkeeping and in all the different areas, and so, it fit me. And I know as kind of the other thing we attempt not to do is, as your children come back, is not reporting to a parent if at all possible. So I reported to both my aunt and my uncle at the time, and then as I kind of went from management trainee, and then we had the opportunity to go into Muskogee. I think that's maybe the only market that we didn't mention, and got into that market, and the market president lost his operations officer at the branch at the time, and I was in Okmulgee, so he asked the family about me coming over, kind of learning and taking her spot, was able to do that, and then took the CTO title kind of full-time in there. And just as things progressed, at some point in time, I was no longer reporting to my uncle. I was going to have to report to my dad. And again, just back to my personality and the way I am, and all of our team members have probably heard this story one time or another, but I remember thinking like, oh man, reporting to my dad made me think about being in 7th grade and us sitting down to do math homework together. And it's story problems. No, you got to write it out and do all this. I mean, we're just, my attitude is not good. And I thought, I was like, I'd rather get a C in this class and not get help from dad than get an A and have to go through this. Like there's no way. So that's kind of rolling through my mind a little bit, but able to handle and go through it. So to have to report to your dad, and then as the oldest, and back to our roles kind of fitting each other, I don't think I would have necessarily ever wanted to be president or CEO to fit me. And so I think Scott's personality, his background has always fit that. And so again, we're in our own places where we fit, but then I go reporting from my dad to reporting to my little brother, so that's, can always be fun right there as well. But it's,
I'm a better boss than
that. No doubt about that.
You must have been nice to him growing up, right?
Most definitely.
Yeah, so. That's really cool to have. But, from what you guys have spoken about, in the last 30 minutes, it seems like, the family understands that we need a structure, and we can't just have, we'll just employ everybody and we'll figure it out. Like you got, with the 3-year thing, if you want to come and work for the bank, you've got to go away for 3 years. That brings, I think, more value in the long run to the business, right? But also, like, it does that, whoever that person is, that child, that cousin, aunt, whatever they are, like, that does them so much value,
right?
And then it feels like that they've earned the right to come back.
No, absolutely.
Like that's really cool to have.
No, definitely. I said you go and earn your stripes somewhere where your name doesn't mean anything, and it gives you some self-confidence, and then again you bring some stuff back to the bank. I know certainly I learned things at Bank of Oklahoma that I've brought to the bank here, right. And the same way in his other jobs. And then too, hey, as we've grown now, at one point in time there was 9 Mabrey family members working the bank on the day-to-day basis, and we had anywhere from 80 to 180 employees. Today, there's only 4 of us working the bank on a day-to-day basis with 275 employees. So the Mabrey family, as far as the success of the bank, is less and less relevant. And we're really dependent upon all the other team members and non-Mabrey family members to grow the bank and grow our brand and make it successful. And so we've been fortunate to hire some really, really good, high-quality people that we've brought in from other institutions and also trained internally. And to help make it successful. So that's more important is the rest of our team members, not the family. So.
Yeah. To that point, how many branches do you guys have at the moment?
We have 15 branches, and we're in 11 different communities.
Okay.
And I think we have maybe 7 in the Tulsa metro area. Then you throw in Morrison, Haskell, Walika, Wetumpka, a couple of Okmulgee, Muskogee, and then Oklahoma City.
Yeah. So with the obviously outside of Tulsa, then a lot of them are kind of like small rural towns that just you build community because the bank seems to be, there isn't that many banks in. Whereas Tulsa, there's one in every corner, right? It's like a church.
Right. Yep.
But, in the small towns, like the bank is part of, it's like the church or whatever. It's a huge part of the community.
That's right. Yeah. And so I think we've done a good job of being true to our roots, because we start in the smaller communities, and where the bank is one of the most important businesses in the community. We give back, support the local schools, the YMCA's, whatever it is, and we do that in the larger markets as well. But yeah, so I think we've done a good job of expanding to become more of a commercial metropolitan bank, to grow, because that's necessary, but also still supporting our roots and our smaller communities where we grew up, where we got started.
Yeah. Bringing things then, fast forwarding to today, what's kind of like the state of the business today? What are you excited about working on at the moment? I mean, for people who wouldn't know the brand or don't see, you guys.
Yeah, we're always looking to grow. Our corporate culture is very, very important to us. How we treat our team members and the conditions that we provide to work in. So going out and recruiting and developing and recruiting talented people always gets me excited to improve the organization, and then certainly continuing to grow a loan and deposit portfolio everywhere. It's easier to grow in Tulsa Metro and Oklahoma City just because there's more opportunity. But we're certainly always still trying to grow in the smaller communities as well. And then we're a lot of digital and technology projects that we're working on that it's important these days to keep up with the technology. And if you want to talk about any of that stuff, as far as kind of just generally speaking where we're trying to head to.
Yeah, I think a lot of it. I mentioned our strategic planning session that we've done forever, and back to when I was even considering about coming back, and went out and was like, saw that we had a website even at the time in 1999, and just my granddad, my dad, aunts and uncles, four of them, 4 locations at the time, but started doing strategic planning with just these small little banks in about 1990, 91, 92. And again, with what you think coming out of college, or, I was 20 or 29 then, but kind of knowing, going, okay, well, they're doing strategic planning, that's pretty impressive. And so through those sessions, always trying to keep a track and understanding back to corporate culture survey, but then what are we looking at from products and services, how we're doing the technology side of things, and looking to grow, improve there, and just the amount of change that happens there, obviously, as we all know, is huge. But we were able to bring in a high-powered CTO, I would say.
Ryan.
Yeah. So, gosh, it'll be 4 years in this March, and so to have him really help drive that technological direction for us with the guidance of the board and the strategic planning team. And we launched a new app at the beginning of this year, and then we are also, for the first time, starting to do some in-house development that we know we can't just directly go with vendors and give us a little bit more control. So we've got some learning that we're doing there, but trying to provide the best services on the technology side of things as well, not only for our customers but for our employees, to improve processes and become more efficient and quicker and better at what we do.
Yeah, for most people who don't understand banking, right, just anything that you can simplify, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's all on the phone now, direct deposit from, I hate going into a business. I think a lot of people generally, the first time back home, we don't have drive-through banks. And I first came out here and I was like, you guys this is the greatest thing ever, right? And then I realized there's drive-through everything in this country. And that was also the greatest thing ever. But I think, just someone as a customer looking at it, you just want something to be as simple as possible, right? And if you can work towards that, and if when you pick up the phone, somebody answers pretty quick, and it takes a lot of the stress out of banking, because it can be a giant pain in the backside and huge stress for people, right?
That's right. Yeah, and it's funny. There are still a lot of customers, and even younger customers, that do like the direct one-on-one relationship, but they want to have their technology be able to perform for them easily whenever they need it. They want the technology to be there when they want it to be. They want to be able to see someone when they want to be able to see someone too. So we do try and have that balance of having the latest digital products and make it as easy and simple as banking as it can be, but at the same time too being available to have one-on-one conversations and relationships whenever the customers want that as well. So
the other thing I want to ask you guys about is, every time I drive through the branch in Oklahoma City, the lights are on and I just see this massive art piece, right? That's kind of what drew me to the business first, because I didn't know. When you drive past on the highway, yes, you can read it, but I need glasses to drive. Right. And
You're my dad's best friend now.
And I just saw this artwork, and I think I messaged it to Austin when we were setting this up. So is that something you guys do at every branch? Like, is that like a statement piece? Like, is it something you do to separate you from other banks? Like, or is it just kind of that one-off spot?
That's a good question, and there's a little bit of a history there, and I'll try and make it as...
We got time.
Okay.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
So just on the artwork in general, so on that piece in Oklahoma City, it was a piece done uniquely for that bank and that place in the bank. And so there's a lady named Sharon Loud, I think she's out of New York, and my dad actually noticed her artwork. It was displayed at the Philbrook Museum of Art here in Tulsa, and it's called a mobile, and so he thought, man, having something unique like that would be a really, really neat and cool thing to do, especially going into a new market and something to draw attention and everything. And it wasn't cheap. And,
I'm sure.
So he looked her up and found her and engaged her, and we hired her to come. And so she and her husband were in Oklahoma City, I think, for over a week. And it's a unique piece. It's just freehand. She just goes in, looks at the space, and designs it. So it's a very, very unique piece of art. My dad loves art, and kind of a little bit more to the story is I tend to be a little more cost conscious, and he doesn't just frivolously spend money, don't get me wrong, but he loves nice art, and whenever we were building our branches, they're always very, very nice. And so, he always was trying to put, nice, high quality art in there. I thought we were spending too much money. And so finally I gave up and just, kind of turned the art thing over to my dad and my brother. So I'm stepping out of it. So we do have a lot of nice art. A lot of the paints in here are really nice, and he'll find other places and bring them in. And the mobile is a good of that. So
Back to having a little bit of internal family drama, right? Why does Dad want this giant piece of artwork and no one's going to see it? Well, people do see it.
And it's funny how many compliments and people we do get comment on the art in our other banks as well, in addition to the mobile. So every time someone does compliment the artwork, I do give Dad credit, even though I don't want to. So good decisions.
He's just grinning from ear to ear.
No, it is, for sure. And it is an opportunity for us. I think we've always been able to have disagreements and good conversations, and especially when it comes to the business side of things. But I think we're all pretty kind of data driven and analytical, and like the design build firms that we use to help with our buildings, and kind of talk about those things. And you've got the hard dollar costs, but then what are the soft dollar costs? What is it about building a feeling and an environment, and where those things lean? So at the end of the day, we'll all say our piece, but then hey, pretty good job usually of knowing when to step back, when to push, but then we're all together and make the decision and go forward and support it 100%.
It's the hard thing with like a piece of artwork like that is you can't put it into numbers, right? What it brings in. You can have people say it, but you can't oh, someone mentioned the artwork again. But it's not there in, it's not there in data, in numbers.
You cannot measure a true return
like most
on
marketing expenses.
Right. I have Lisa sitting here, our director of I give her a hard time all the time. But it's so hard to actually put numbers on the marketing stuff and what bang you're really getting for your buck. But,
definitely. So but there was a piece of artwork in this branch we walked into this morning. It seems like there's just something to brighten the space up, and because again, most people I look at a bank as in going into I go to the hospital. I just generally don't like it. Hence why I love my app and everything that. But the more you can bring it in a community, and the greatest idea I've seen is people who just generally have a coffee shop and there's a bank attached to it kind of thing, right? It's just, just come and have a conversation and hang out and have a coffee, and then, then we'll talk about your money.
I think back on the experience and being outside of the bank. My wife and I married and in Texas, and go to open first banking account outside of Citizens Bank, and go in there and all the options and choices, and they're talking about, okay, you got to keep a minimum balance, or we're going to charge you however much a month, and then per item fees and all this stuff. And I'm like, minimum balance? My wife and I, we're paycheck to paychecks. We can't keep $300. It's like if you can keep a minimum balance, you can avoid the service charge. And then we find out, you can tie it to a savings account. And so we put whatever, a couple $100 in a savings account, don't touch it, so we can get our checking account, service charge free. And I go back and call my dad, and I'm like, man, what kind of deal is this? This is my money. You're charging me for my money, and I don't care you got check processing costs, but just not knowing any of that. And I still think I use that same mentality now of going into a bank. We've got regulation and all these things, but it's going, okay, how can we, and we're not there, but always working toward being as frictionless as possible, and realizing for us a lot of our frustrations are the same as our customers, and so trying to take that approach and how do we solve for it and improve it and be better.
Finishing up, back to the community thing and being in Tulsa and being around events. Obviously, even if you don't love golf, one of the massive events that happened in Tulsa and brought a significant amount of traffic to Tulsa and travel dollars was the PGA Championship.
Sure.
How was your guys' involvement as a bank as far as the Scott? I know you have a kind of golfing, part of you that does that, but as a bank, how was your involvement with that? Do you have anything stuff to do with it? I'm obviously extremely excited to have it in Tulsa, but
so a couple things there from the bank standpoint. So we had a chalet and on the 12th hole, and so we were able to entertain clients and team members all week long, and so it was a great event from the bank from that standpoint. Our customers and clients loved being out there, and of course it was great for the whole community, the city of Tulsa and the state, and the recognition that we got. And we also for the first time the PGA Championship did a concert series in conjunction with the tournament, and so Eric Church played on Wednesday night on the golf course, and then Pitbull played on Friday night at Philbrook, and so we made a donation towards that concert series, and there's 4 local charities benefited from the concert series, so the bank was involved in that as well. And then it just so happened I actually was president of Southern Hills Country Club this year, and so I had a lot of involvement, just in helping, put the tournament on and volunteer work and those type of things. So it was a lot of fun, great week for Tulsa and for the state of Oklahoma. I think the economic impact overall, there's different ways to measure that, but from the PGA and the chamber stats, about $150 million of economic impact to the city of Tulsa. And then just the impression value as far as, Tulsa being mentioned, the state of Oklahoma being mentioned with all the TV coverage, nationally, internationally, different estimates to the tune of several $100 million to over $1 billion and stuff. So it was a great time, a lot of fun.
It's incredible. I had Reagan Kingsley on the podcast to talk about Reagan does marketing for Southern Hills, and he was, I basically said, look, everyone knows what it was like on TV. If they went in person, they know what it was like. What was it like for you on the ground? Right. So I'm interested to ask you the same question. Obviously, you had a huge involvement being president. What was that like? And just finding out that you were having it. So the week of the tournament was a blast for me. All my work was done leading up, and so the week of I was able to enjoy the tournament and enjoy our chalet and stuff. Leading up. The reason Southern Hills got the 2022 was we were supposed to be at Trump Bedminster. And January 6th happens, and then shortly thereafter, within about 5 days, the PGA announced that it was pulling from Trump Bedminster, and so then 5 days after that, they announced Southern Hills. So I was involved in those conversations with the PGA early on, and getting our board approval and getting the PGA's board approval. So it's pretty exciting, kind of understanding and knowing where that was headed. So once it was announced, for Tulsa and state of Oklahoma and Southern Hills, it was pretty neat. So a lot of excitement. Any just golfing memories for you that was just like, I can't believe this is happening. This is such a good thing to happen. I mean, obviously being a president of a golf club when they're hosting a major is pretty epic, but just as a golf nerd, was there anything that you're like, oh my gosh, it's Tiger Woods? Well,
so honestly, the coolest thing for me that week is I got to attend the Champions Dinner, and it was there was I think 14 past PGA champions, and then me and 2 of the guys from the club. So I had dinner. Roy McIlroy was on my left, and Padraig Harrington was across from me, and Keegan Bradley was on my right. So that was pretty cool having next to Roy McIlroy for dinner next to him for 2 or 3 hours. So,
he's tiny, isn't he?
He's a small guy, but just nice he can be. I mean, just very, very down to earth, and what you see on TV is what he's like in private too. So that's pretty neat.
That's really cool. And obviously the golf course is extremely hard. If any of you listening have played or heard of Southern Hills, it is not easy. But it played pretty good that week, and we had great Oklahoma weather. It was boiling hot, and then it was freezing cold. They got all the experience. But C4, what about you? You had some involvement from the ops side during that week, and or did you get to just enjoy the chalet and shake hands and kiss babies?
I just got to enjoy it. So it was great. Being there with customers and clients, and just I was out there a couple of days, and then one day brought my family out, and I actually my guest was my youngest son, my wife, and one of her friends, and they're not huge golf fans, but we got to the course, and with getting our way to the chalet, we saw Jordan Spieth, Roy McIlroy, and Tiger Woods, and so we really could have been done from our family's perspective and been out of there. But hung out there and had a great time.
That's awesome. Yeah, seeing great athletes like that in person is and everyone's got their phone out. Like I stood on the second tee box for about an hour watching that group come through, and you're just like, I've seen Tiger Woods hit a golf shot. I've seen Tiger Woods hit driver, which is, and Rory hit driver, which is kind of the most, best thing to watch him hit. But such a great week, and for you guys to be involved from a banking and obviously a personal standpoint. That's the memories you're going to have for a lifetime.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So you mentioned the kids. Do the kids have any passions or desire to get involved? Obviously, they've got to go away for a few years. I mean, you mentioned you have 4 kids. Scott, do you have any kids?
I have 3.
Okay.
Mine are a little bit younger than his. My oldest is a senior at the University of Oklahoma, and then our middle child, our daughter's the oldest. Son is a freshman at OU. Then our youngest daughter is a senior at Hall in high school. Okay. So mine have a little bit of time. He's got a couple that could be eligible, but they're charting their own path, it seems like right now.
Yeah, right now my oldest 2 are out of school, and one went to Arizona State University and in Dallas, looking at kind of data analysis and could be pre-med type stuff at some point in time, and then the other was an art major at Savannah College of Art and Design. So they're figuring it out. But again, I mean, I said I never said never, but never thought I would come back, and they would have 3 or 4 years. So
that's awesome.
Kind of see how it goes.
Sounds like you guys are a heavy OU family.
Most of us are. There's a couple in the family that went to Oklahoma State that they would they may take issue with that comment, but yeah. So my granddad went to OU. He never graduated. My grandmother did, and then my dad, his one brother and one sister went to OU. His other brother went to NSU, and I went to OU. He started there. All 3 of my kids are there. Most of my cousins have been there. Had a couple cousins go to Oklahoma State, and hey, we obviously have tickets at OU. The bank also has tickets at Oklahoma State as well that we attend and give to clients and stuff. So we support both schools. But definitely big time Sooner fans between the 2 of us. So
Bedlam's a great family occasion for you guys.
That's good. Although last year Oklahoma State, got the better of us. So I'm
an OSU fan, so I really, I've been to every game for the last few years, so I really didn't enjoy Norman a couple of years ago. But it was last year was great. But generally in the history of OSU, it's not good. So Bedlam, I'm sure, is a blast. But finishing up, what's one? It seems like you guys have a huge, great culture here. But from your kind of standpoint, what is something that you guys work on every day to have mixing in the family? And also you mentioned now the family's significantly outnumbered with the amount of employees that you have, but what kind of things do you do it seems like every day to just keep that that team culture, that corporate culture in moving in the right direction?
So I think one of our biggest strengths is, and our dad always said, he goes, hey, you spend more time at work than you do with your family, so you want it to be a place that people enjoy coming. It's a pretty obvious statement, but I never thought of it that way. So we do a few different things, and you jump in any time, but ones we did actually do a corporate culture survey every year, which is kind of a scorecard that the team members give on management to make sure that we're running the bank properly and there's not any areas where people are unhappy or any problems or issues bubbling up that we're not aware of. Number 1, then we also do reverse evaluations where once a year every manager is basically rated by the people that work for them. And it's not something we use to beat them over the head with. It's more of a coaching tool that, hey, because that has the most effect on your happiness is your relationship with your boss at work. And so we always want to make sure those relationships are healthy. And so I think our corporate culture survey and our reverse evaluations really give us insight into making sure we continue to have a good environment for people to work in. We have the Mabrey engagement team. We try and do fun things at work. I showed up at work 2 days ago when there was a can of Play-Doh on my desk, so I could, make some Play-Doh figures during the day if I got bored, I guess, or whatever. And so those are some of the things that we do because our culture is important to us. We want to continue to retain and attract really, really good people, and I think we do a really good job of that.
Yeah. No, it really is. I think the foundation back to when they started and been doing that forever through the strategic planning and reviewing that, and definitely hard work and focus on that, and then constant adjustment and then trying to get feedback. And all organizations I think struggle with communication. Even our low scores tend to be relatively high, but we still will take those low scores, and those can be focus areas for us a lot of time. And I think as we continue to bring really good people in from the outside, that even has had a improved impact on new ideas, new thoughts, and trying to get fit in. And sometimes it can be a little difficult. I think, I think the culture's great, but it's probably not. It's not for everybody. No culture is probably, but really is just that. I think that's the main work and focus, and just really take it a day at a time.
Yeah.
And then the results almost kind of take care of themselves, which maybe sounds a little cliche, but that's really a big part of it.
Yeah, you focus on the little things and it all adds up, but eventually, right? You kind of get everyone moving in the right direction. But, gentlemen, thanks so much for giving me an hour of your time, share some awesome family stories. I love the joke of the art family story. That's the stuff like that people don't get to hear, so I'm glad we got that in. But for people listening, go to mabreybank.com and check out the story and everything you guys do, all the branches you guys have around the state. And C4 and Scott, thanks so much, and we'll catch you guys next episode.
Okay.
Cheers.
Yeah,
thanks,
great.
Mike.
Yeah,
Yep.
thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at OklahomaHOF. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And finally, our third sponsor for today, the Oklahoma 988 Mental Health Lifeline. 988 is the direct 3-digit lifeline that connects you with the trained behavioral health professionals that can get all Oklahomans the help that they need. Learn more by visiting 988oklahoma.com. It's 988oklahoma.com. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.